So now that we have all of our settings done in Tunerstudio, there's a couple things that we want to double check before we do any kind of first startup. And the first thing we want to do is go through and check our coils. We want to make sure all of our coils are good to go and that our wiring is good. So what we're going to do is we're going to bounce this from cylinder 1 to cylinder 5 to 3 to 4 and then 2 to 6. You don't have to do it in that order necessarily. It's just easier because then you're not bouncing around settings and stuff on the laptop. Being that 1 and 5 spark at the same time, 3 and 4 spark at the same time, and 2 and 6, you won't have to sit there and keep flipping through. You'll just be able to basically do a start-stop and then change cylinder, start-stop. It'll make sense whenever we get into it. The next thing you're going to need is a setup like this. This is a D-series spark plug wire hooked onto a J-series coil. And we can hook this into cylinder 5 or cylinder 1. And we will be able to use our timing light to verify that our timing is on. So let's go ahead and get this hooked up to cylinder number 1. And as long as we have a good spot that it can ground to, I'm just using the intake setup here. And we are going to go back to the Tunerstudio. So once we're in Tunerstudio, oops, I did not mean to do that. We're going to go over to injector and spark testing. We're going to enable the test. And we need to make sure that we hook our power back up. So that's the injector, fuel, everything is good there. All right, so what we're going to do is set this to where we go to coil testing. This is the millisecond interval. This is basically what RPM that's at. So we can actually, I think we decrease this, say to 50. And we're going to use like a 2.4, 2.0, something like that. Coil testing mode. We're just doing 1. And coil A is the 1 and 5 coil. So if you can hear that, I doubt you can see it. I can't get the camera too close to it because it's such a high frequency, it'll start disrupting the camera. But that one is good. All right. So, you want to make sure you hit stop. You do not want to grab that thing while it's sparking. It has a lot of power. If I can get my camera set here, I'm going to jump this to the second spot. So remember, we want to test 1 and 5 on that one. We want to go to 3, which is the farthest one, and that's going to be coil B. And we're going to do the same thing. Hear that? That's firing perfect. All right, we're going to stop that. And we're going to go to number 2. Now, like on the first and third one there, you want to jump to the front bank, do the same thing. I'm not going to go through them all since I can just tell you how to do it. Oop. I did not change the coil setting. So coil C. And as you can hear, that one's working perfectly too. So once we do that, and we test the front and back bank cylinders, the next thing is we do want to make sure that the injectors are working fine. Now, this can be a little bit difficult because we already have the top hat on, but what we can do is unhook all of the injectors and basically do an injector pulse with the fuel pump off. That way we're not just pouring fuel into there. And we can just test one at a time. Only plug one in at a time. And then that way we can make sure every injector's firing and all that's good. If you really want to get into it, you can take the upper manifold off. Now I'm running the Holly, but it's the same deal. Take the whole upper manifold off, and you can actually make sure that each one of them is squirting fuel. If it come off of a running engine, they're probably going to squirt fuel as long as they can fire. If they're not firing, there's a problem in the wiring. So I guess I would suggest to take the top hat off to make sure that that everything's working correctly, but I'm going to leave that up to you. We're going to get everything hooked back up, and then we're going to do our first start. All right, so let's go ahead and get ready to do our first start. First thing we want to do is start a data log. Keep track of this. Got that going. And I want the fuel VE table open. And I'm going to keep a close eye on this and where it's at after it starts, and then the AFR. Because if it swings really rich and dies, we need to take out fuel wherever it starts to die at. If it goes rich or lean, we need to add fuel, and I am guessing we're going to have to add fuel here. All right, here we go. All right, I'm just going to hold the throttle open a little bit. Okay, I can tell we're going to have to add fuel right here, because it's going to die if I start letting off of the throttle. It's getting pretty lean right there. So I know 40 is too lean, so I'm going to start this off at 45. Okay, 45's a little rich, but it's acting kind of like it wants to idle on its own. Yep. Okay, so my TPS, I'm actually off the TPS now. And oftentimes this is a lot harder than this. But we are going to take advantage of it. So we're running a little bit rich, but that's not necessarily a bad thing with us being cold. We need it to run a little rich. Being that this is at 45 and it started fairly easy, I'm going to blend this up. I'm going to get it up into this 50-60 area. I'm just going to blend that up just like that. And then basically we're going to let this warm up. Now, if it wouldn't start, then, we would probably pull the plug. I would pick one of the plugs in the front, say, cylinder 5, and I'd pull it. If it would not start, and if that plug is soaking wet, we are just dumping way too much fuel in it during the cranking pulse. Nope. See, it died. It tried to save. Okay, we're going to burn. Let's see if it'll start back up. Okay. So whenever it burns, it'll cut out for a second, and if it's not idling with enough power, it'll basically stall the engine out and kill it. That's what happened there. So what we're going to do first is we're actually going to let this engine warm up all the way to 180 degrees. Now, I know my car runs a little hot, and it could be just a sensor calibration being off, but mine will generally get up into the 200 area, and it'll creep up to about 210, and at that point, the fan switch will turn the fans on. So it'll hover between 200 and 210, and as long as it doesn't go above the 210, I'm perfectly happy with it. Now what we're going to do is just let this warm up, and if yours won't stay running with the throttle being shut off, you may need to come in and turn your idle up a little bit, and that's under your idle warm-up duty steps. And since I got this one turned off, I'm not too worried about it. Another thing you can do to kind of cheat and get around that is to actually pull a vacuum hose and let the engine idle up that way. And as you can see here, the warm-up enrichment's still activated. The after start enrichment was activated before, it's no longer activated. Basically, what we want to do is get this up to temp to where the warm-up enrichment will go off, and then we can turn the auto tune on. I'll just turn this off. And once this gets up to temp, we can turn this on. I mean, we can turn it on right now. It won't do anything until the coolant temperature is reached. Now, what this is trying to target is your AFR table that we set. So I can see it's blending in these 4 cells. So, and being that I know that this engine likes to idle around 13.5, I'm just going to go ahead and set these at that. And I'm gonna rev it up just a little bit while I burn it, and then that way it won't die. I'm gonna go ahead and blend these. I'm gonna make these look a little better. Okay. So it's up to 170 degrees right at there. And the minimum CLT is 160. So we can change this. We will actually want to change this. We kind of want as tight a perimeters as we can get for the everyday cruising temperature range. So I'm going to go ahead and set this at 180. Okay, so it's starting to activate. You can see right here, this is the cell weighing. So this is like basically how good it knows what that cell is running. And then this is what it's changing. So the blue, I believe, is adding fuel, and the red is taking fuel away. Now what we can do is rev this up just a little bit and start covering this map. And as you'll see over here, it starts weighing it in. Now the filter kicked up, minimum temperature is back activated. It will not make any changes with the cell or the coolant too low. Now the more we weigh in on this, the better job it's going to do at fixing the map for us. I'm probably going to turn this up. Probably do this 14. This 14 also. Now, the best thing that you can do is literally just put it in first and maybe cruise around a parking lot and really hit these cells down here. And then you want to gently work your way out. Unless you can get on a brake dyno where you can really cover this map, this is going to take a little bit. But I do want you to be aware that, you don't want to go out hammering on it real hard because this ignition map is not tuned. So the fuel map will change a little bit after the ignition map is tuned. So it's kind of a balance. You want it to be good enough that you can either get it, drove to the dyno, or get it on a trailer, get it up there. I street tuned mine for a few weeks before it was a few months before I ever even got it on a dyno. I kind of just did my own research and kind of just tuned it myself. But I tell you what, after I got on the dyno and got it tuned, it was just a lot less headache. So it really is worth just getting it there and getting it tuned and getting it over with. And you don't have to worry about your motor blowing up. You're not constantly worried. So, and these little quick jabs, I mean, these are altering these cells, but in reality, it's not a very good setting because this is basically tip in. So depending on how our Excel enrichment is, that actually may be giving false readings. And that's why we want these cells to actually turn green, because that means it's been hit a lot. That means that we've actually hovered on that cell for a little bit, and the computer has a really good idea of what is actually being commanded in that cell. So another thing too, after we get this done and we get our idle set where we want it, and I'm pretty happy with this. It's not bad. It's not super great either. Like I may change this to like 45, and just see how it smooths out this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these cells and I'm going to lock them. So auto tune will no longer mess with the idle area here. I'm going to go ahead and lock these ones to. I'm going to scale them out a little bit better. 47. Yeah. Let's just do 47 right here. So we're going to claim these as our idle cells. All right, so auto tune, if we take off driving, is not going to affect these idle cells. And that way we can get our idle set. We're done with it. Now, next time, whenever we start up, I'm actually going to go ahead and stop all this. We're done here. I'm going to apply it and save it. Okay, so we're done there. Go ahead and stop the data log. And I'm going to go ahead and shut the engine off so I can talk. So if we drive it around a little bit and get this bottom portion of the map pretty good, say, in here, we get this area pretty cleaned up, we'll do the rest of this on the dyno. This area is not too important, just because you shouldn't be cruising around at 5,000 RPMs. But we can touch it up on the dyno too. Or even just driving, we can do this area. And you can actually you could do this area with auto tune and everything. I wouldn't be afraid to. It's just that you need to get the ignition set, and really the only good way to do this is on a dyno. So another thing too. So the next time we actually start this up, before we ever start, so we'll key on, do a data log, and then with the engine cooled off, we will actually come over here and hit start auto tune. We'll do this after the key's on. That way the ECU is connected. We'll go ahead and start the data log with the ECU connected and start the auto tune over here. And what that's going to do is, since we know our fuel VE table is good right here, what that's going to do is it's going to set up our warm-up enrichment. And as the engine warms up, it's going to modify these. And after 180, let's change that right there. After 180, you should be at 100%, which that puts that right back to where this map was, because this is like an addition multiplier. So it'll add 2% at 155 degrees, and it'll add 35% at 60 degrees. So, and if you end up having problems with that, you may have to modify this in advance. We did start it around this area, so we should be fairly close enough that the warm-up enrichment will work. But if, like I said, if it's too far, too rich or way too lean, it'll actually confuse the O2 sensor. You have to be within a window for it to understand what's going on. But with that auto tune, once you get up to 180 degrees, you can go ahead and stop it, save it to the ECU, apply it, and then you may want to do this 2 or 3 times. I do it whenever it's in the winter and I can get it down here into the 20 and 30 degree area. It's pretty hard for me to get down that area because I keep my garage semi heated, so 40, 50 degrees is about as cold as it'll get. Just because I have water lines and stuff in here. But if your garage gets colder, you'll be able to tune these lower areas. If you're in, I don't know, Texas and you hardly ever see freezing, you'll probably only be able to get it down to the 40, 50 degree area. So, but I've done this 2 or 3 different times just to get it where I like it. It's sometimes it's not just a one time and done deal. And I think that about covers it. That's going to wrap it up for today, guys. If you have any questions or comments, leave it in the comment section. If you haven't already, smash that like button. And if you like to see content like this, consider subscribing. We'll see you guys later.